So, Phil, thanks so much for giving me this time so that we can have this sort of semi-formal, informal conversation about our work together over the recent month or so, where we've been working with Dynamic Genie. And I really wanted to do this because you've been really close to it, and I really appreciate all the time that you've given me in the development of this work with your school's trust. I'm excited to do this because I really genuinely think we've been doing cutting edge work here, both, sort of combining system thinking and flow within an organizational dynamic and big challenges that every organization has, and how we implement the cutting edge of AI technology these days into this workflow. So really appreciative of your time. It would be great if, as we talk through our flow and our process and what we've done together, how you found it compared to sort of traditional consultancy support. And as we go through the different steps, we can maybe bounce off a little bit about how long that would normally take and what the costs would normally be. Obviously, every organization is different, but just as a guideline, that'd be really helpful.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, really excited to be talking to you about it. I think we've worked together a little bit in the development of this software, I guess, and trying to align it to the systems that we've got. So, which has been a really exciting process for me, I think. So, I think if I kind of start with your first question, which was around why we came to be looking at this within education.
Yeah.
And I think you and I had done a bit of work in the past on a larger scale strand for a whole city, really, where we'd been able to assimilate a large amount of information into some really useful strands and common elements and themes that were pulled together.
Yeah.
And I could really see where that would fit within the education multi-academy trust sector, if you like. So in my current position, I was new into role, taken on a new job, large multi-academy trust organization, 21 schools, lots of people working within that system, all of whom were with valid opinions and thoughts and ideas, all of whom completing documentation based on their role, regularly in and out of schools, providing feedback on what the schools needed to improve and what were the strengths, what needed further development. And when you're new into a role, you have to try and assimilate that information really quite quickly. And we've kind of joked before that maybe humanly that isn't possible. You can't sit with 200 documents and make sense of it as a human. So I was really interested in how AI might be able to support with that. And I think you really helped us come to some really effective solutions on how AI can really distill that information down into something maybe a little bit more useful for schools in order to feed into the larger process, which I guess we'll talk through kind of throughout this session today.
Yeah. So essentially, just for people that don't know my lingo and language with these things, we consolidated those 250 documents or so into, I think, about 13 knowledge bases.
Yeah, correct.
And those knowledge bases then are all feeding this work that we're going to talk about with Dynamic Genie, which is where we're pulling together a new 5-year strategy document.
Yeah.
And just originally, the work was with Insight Genie, wasn't it? Where we'd done that broader stakeholder piece for students and teachers.
Yeah.
And we're just evolving as we go, basically.
No, it's fine. And Insight Genie was really effective at being able to do that for us. And again, I guess we'll talk in a moment about how we're kind of bringing Insight Genie back into this process as well. But I think just to come back to those knowledge bases, the knowledge bases themselves as individual pieces of work are really useful documents. So, we've managed to pull together a knowledge base on notes of visit for all of our schools, a knowledge base on directors board meetings over the last 12 months, a knowledge base on strategic documentation, a knowledge base on action plans. So all of those documents that sit within a system have been assimilated into a common set of themes and strands, if you like, which allows me as a strategic leader to get a really good understanding at a strategic level as to what's going on in each of my schools in each of these different areas. So yeah, really powerful piece of work in itself, I think.
Yeah, and we did that in about a week, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, I was working some evenings and weekends, but we did it in about a week. And
We
how,
did do it in a week.
if we just sort of reflect back, how long would that have taken you if you'd have had staff members doing that, or an external
So I
consultancy?
think the first thing to say is I don't even know that it's possible. So, you know, I don't think the work that we've managed to get to with Dynamic Genie through it, just in terms of knowledge bases, would even have been possible. If I'd had to sit down and try and do that as an individual, I wouldn't have been there by the new year. I probably, by the end of this academic year, I might have had more of a sense of what the intelligence that Knowledge Genie is, that knowledge bases are giving me out of Dynamic Genie really quickly. So you know, I think it's a huge piece of work, and you can't really underestimate the power of pulling that information together.
Yeah. And I know this is an impossible question, but just genuine gut feel, what do you think that would have cost if you'd have got an external agency to do that work?
So if you were looking at consultant time to be able to do that, I think you'd easily be talking upwards of £50,000 worth of consultancy time, you know, plus. I mean, I don't know. I'm pulling figures out of the air in a way, because I can't imagine even anyone being able to do it. But I think in terms of strategic alignment and organizations that will come together to work with you and say, we're going to help you develop a strategic plan, you'd be talking, you know, upside of 50,000 plus.
Yeah, I guess the point is we're not trying to sell that in to anybody, but the point is it's usually really time expensive and physically, financially expensive.
Even if you just take into account, you know, my strategic leaders time, the executive team time, you know, without thinking about external consultation of any type, you know, weeks and months worth of strategic leaders time, executive leaders time comes at a huge cost to the trust, because they're all busy doing other things. So, you know, if you start to total up the salaries, which I won't do, that could have been spent doing that, then, you know, you're easily engaging sort of well above six figures.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So you got on the phone and said, Anthony, could we do something with the strategic plan?
Yeah.
And I thought, what a brilliant opportunity for us to work together on this and develop it together. So I'm really big on co-creation in everything that we're doing. And this was just an ideal opportunity to co-create in a schools environment. Most of my work obviously is with the NHS. So it's brilliant when you got on the phone. So we'll talk through step by step what we've done, and if we can get your views on what we've done, what we've learned, and how it compares, that would be fantastic. So I guess we've talked about the knowledge bases. The next piece is probably we did that initial piece of work on the personas work. So shall I just give a quick 30 seconds on personas? So the strategy that we've got is not only is AI built into Dynamic Genie and Insight Genie, the fundamental core model, if you like. What we've got with Dynamic Genie is up to 15 personas or 15 different types of stakeholder. And for every one of those, ideally, we've got a human attached to that role that does a lot of the validation and the approvals. But we've got a persona, which is an AI version of, let's say, a governance expert. And we set that persona up in advance so that in the live session, the persona is doing the bulk of the work so that the human can be the reviewer and the sign-offer, as opposed to having to do that all that physical work of a lot of writing and a lot of reading and all that work. So we started off, didn't we, Phil, with us doing the first versions of the personas and sending that out to the key stakeholders. Well, I'll let you take over because
that's fine. And initially what was really interesting about the personas was sending them to people and saying, and bear in mind the persona pulls information from a lot of different sources. So we've come up with these AI generated personas of my different team members, and I sent them out and said, have a look at this, feedback to me what you think. And the initial reaction of almost everyone was, wow, it's got me spot on. That is exactly what I'm interested in. That is my passion. That's what I would say. So I think the initial work was that the personas were pretty accurate, just generating from the information we've been able to pull together. I think there's a couple of other things to think about. One was what I really liked was the ability to create personas of people that don't exist within my organization. So being able to say, actually, I don't have a director that's specifically accountable for disadvantage, but I'd like someone to be looking at everything that we do through a disadvantaged lens and thinking about how it might impact our more disadvantaged students, or creating a lean expert on my staff and somebody who's specifically interested in, efficiencies and systems and reducing time spent in different areas. So I think creating team members that don't exist added a real power to what we did as well. I think the second reflection on personas was, once we started doing the work, there were elements that we started to realize were missing from people's personas, and saying, oh, actually, it hasn't got this person quite right in the way that, or it's missed this chunk of their workout somehow. So I think where we are now is being able to allow people to kind of populate more of their persona before we start the work. So asking them some simple questions about their roles and responsibilities and interests and passions through a kind of simple questionnaire, I guess, first, but then feed into the system, is making that work much tighter in terms of really kind of nailing people's interests to the mast, if you like, when we start the work. So that in itself, I think, has been a real power of the system.
Yeah. And then what we've done after that is we've then looked at what the gaps are. So we already thought about disadvantaged and lean, but then once we've got everybody's views and personas back, we can then also go, okay, we've got those 13 personas all mapped out. Is there any missing? Is there anything missing? And get the AI to suggest, actually, you might be missing a different character that would add more value, and then we can add that in, and then we've got that complete picture.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's been really important as well, just to kind of reflect on, especially if you're a smaller trust, you don't have this huge breadth of people that you can draw upon. So I think where you can kind of substitute people with an AI version of a person, I think it brings just brings a different slant and a different way of thinking to the way you might approach something.
I tell you what, I have been amazed by this process, in that you'll get the first draft, which is the fundamental engine of Dynamic Genie. You'll get a first draft of a section of the strategy, and you'll read it and you go, that's really good. That's really good. And then a persona comes at it from their worldview, and the things that come out are like, wow, I'd never thought of that.
Yeah.
And just because it's absolutely focused on that particular worldview, that it comes out with extra things that you just don't think of in that generic mindset. And that's really supportive for the actual humans in those roles, because they can look at that and go, yes, I agree, that's a good point, that's a good point. And still add their own as well, above and beyond what the AI suggests. But the AI is doing such a good job. If you get the design right, as we have, then it produces great inputs.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, again, as humans, there's only so much you can hold in your mind. You only have so much capacity at any one time. And I think, though I might have an interest and passion in belonging, I can't hold all of that in my head at any one time. So when AI knows that, it will prompt me to think about things like, oh yeah, I've totally forgotten about that. That's brilliant. We can feed that in. So I think having that kind of, it's almost like an extension of your own brain that kind of goes, well, you might want to think about this. You've thought about that in the past. So I think that brings a real power and kind of eases the cognitive load a little bit for people. And the system is thinking about those things for you.
Which is massively what this is all about. Everything that Fit to Care is about reducing the cognitive load for humans, so that humans can do the more interesting stuff and the things that they're very good at. So judgments and decision making and discussions with each other, and that collaboration piece. Let the AI do the work that drains us and takes our time, so that we've got that that better value add time. Okay, brilliant. So then the next thing we moved on to, and again, we've sort of developed this and learned and done a better job as a result of our experience together, was the document criteria. So we were starting to get some feedback from some staff around, actually, our existing document's quite good.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, how can we move from a subjective, it needs more work, to an objective, these are the areas that we absolutely have to improve? So we then generated another system, essentially, another AI system, to generate a document criteria, so we can say, right, that is our existing document. What's good about it? What's not so good about it? And then that is a really valuable exercise then, so that the team knows we've got improvements to make, which enables that behavior change move. But it also helps us design what the new system and the new document needs to be and what it needs to cover. So we need to get it from a 36 out of 100 up to a an 85 or a 90 out of 100. That's the goal and the ambition. How do we do that? And that's by identifying where the gap is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that, I look at it in two different ways, really. One is, as a new leader into an organization, and you pick up the strategic plan and people kind of go, well, this is our strategic plan, let's run with that for a bit longer because we think it's quite good. It's really difficult just to be kind of outwardly critical of that and say, well, I wouldn't do it like this. Whereas actually, when you've got an external resource that will evaluate it for you and say, these are the other things you might want to think about, these are the strengths of this plan, these are where it's lacking a little bit, it gives you that kind of green light, if you like, to start to pick at it a little bit more and understand where the gaps are. And also it explains to people where they might not be able to see the weaknesses in it because they designed it. And I think that's the second way of looking at it. If I'm a leader that's been in place for 10 years and I wrote the strategic plan 3 years ago, again, it's really useful to have an evaluation of it from something external, something with no kind of other reason for doing it, no alternative agenda or anything else. It's just looking at it based against what it knows a good plan looks like, and then it says, well, this is what yours doesn't have. Would that be useful? So I think it's really powerful. And again, what I really love about Dynamic Genie is that because of the closed system it operates in, you've been able to populate that with some really effective planning tools, strategic plans, and an analysis of some really effective strategic plans that the system is drawing on, so it really understands what a strong strategic plan looks like, and it helps you shape yours up in the areas where it might be weak.
Yes, it's a good point. That's worth mentioning. As part of our process, we built a knowledge base that was explicitly around, okay, what's best practice around the world in terms of school trusts and their strategic plans, and that was again a dynamite document on its own, wasn't it?
Just fascinating reading in itself.
yeah, really was useful. So then what we did was we took all that we just talked about, and were able then to design a bespoke Dynamic Genie system ready for the live event. And even though we are both really close and understand the importance of buy-in and bringing people along with us and those sorts of things, I think what we learned from this system or process was we did this, but we didn't do enough of it, which was getting people comfortable in the system before we actually join the live session. So we've done a fairly good job, I think, but we still had people that were nervous about AI, and we hadn't got them to the stage where they just trust the system. And I think that's our learning point, which is do what we need to do, whatever that is, so that when people come into the live event, they're not worried about the system. They're not worried that the computer says this and I'm going to have to abide by it for the next 5 years. It's just getting that level of comfort, I think we've learned.
Yeah, I agree. I think where we went wrong a little bit with that live event, we made a lot of assumptions because you and I had been embedded in it for so long, getting ready for that day, about where people's starting points, I think. And we didn't give enough credence to the fact that they were coming in at this level and we were already operating at this level. So I think that the initial stages are about making sure that people understand why they're coming to this event, what it's going to do, what the system is able to do, and like you say, learning to trust the system and allow it to go with things with the knowledge that you can alter again at any point. It's never set in stone, it's never done, it's never final. You can always tweak and implement and add and think again. So I think initially the process of our live set was quite slow, in that people were really conscientiously looking at every word, every detail, and going, oh, I'm not sure about that, should we change that word, and should we change it? Which we didn't need that depth at all. And I think the other thing to reflect on is the amount of time you give to that live session. So we were only really able, for various factors, to allocate about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I think it was, on the day to the initial session. Realistically, that needs to be a day. You need people to be able to contribute and participate for a day. Otherwise, you're racing through. You're not taking your time to explain certain areas, and you're not going to get finished. And I think people need that full cycle to complete in a day. Now, again, reflect on that. I'm talking about producing a full, almost complete, 80%, 85% complete strategic plan in a day. I mean, we don't do that. That's like a term's work. I don't know, maybe more, in terms of getting that final document in place. So, we're talking about dedicating a group of people for a day, and by the end of that day, you'll pretty much have your strategic plan written and ready just to make some final few alterations. So, I think it's being realistic about the time you've got to commit to that is really important.
The thing that I was really, really excited and pleased about, and the whole design is about this, was, yes, we had a teething problems with getting people just to relax. But once we were off and running and the system was working as it should, it's that engagement on a particular contentious issue. I don't know if there's one that you can remember or pull to mind, but I was, obviously I'm not an expert in the schools arena either, but I was just sitting back and looking at the people bouncing off each other.
Yeah.
And thinking, oh my God, this is working like a dream. This is absolutely working like a dream.
So I think probably the big one for us was it kind of recommended a change in one of our values, and I could see the reasons why it was doing that, and a lot of that was to do with, again, around some stuff that I'd written coming in as a new leader. So it redesigned the system around this kind of change in values, if you like. Now actually, a change in your values as an organization is huge. That requires a lot of in-depth thought and concentration and thinking and selling and all that sort of stuff. So there was a feeling that was kind of had been rushed through by the system, which was absolutely right. But I think the conversation that generated and the depth of conversation around, what is the right way to do this, and how can we involve more stakeholders in discussion, was really powerful. But I think just having that conversation generated by the system was kind of demonstrates the power of the system, if you like, because it's opening the door to that conversation in a way that might have taken time previously. I don't know.
So thanks. I'm really conscious of your time, Phil. It's been really valuable that we've been over this, because I think people will be able to see that the flow actually works, and the sort of working relationship that we've generated going through this process has really worked. Just reflecting now and taking a step back, just give us an overview of the system and how it's worked and how you found working with Fit to Care, and what would be your closing remarks to people?
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the real powers of what we've been able to do is, we're kind of being able to generate a bespoke approach to this with your help, your collaboration, and your thinking. You've really thought about what it is that my organization needs right now, and you've been able to adapt and tweak your systems to allow that to happen, which is really powerful for us, and it's got us in a strong place. To me, the absolute power of Dynamic Genie and the tools that sit behind it is that you're using AI effectively to really do the heavy lifting for you, like the stuff that you shouldn't have to do as executive leaders, but you often get mired down in this kind of production of documents. Whereas actually what that's doing is it's doing the production role for us. What we're doing is the real intelligent, smart thinking around what exactly are we trying, we're able to drill down into the precision of what we want to achieve, and then AI can translate that into a strategic plan. So if we talk about, we've talked about disadvantage already, but if I really focus on with my staff a conversation around, okay, we need to improve outcomes for disadvantage, here's where we are at the moment, AI is constantly listening and thinking, what disadvantage, where can I see where that's worked? And it's pulling in from all sorts of sources that intelligence around effective work with disadvantaged students. And then it's starting to recommend that into our plan. So I don't have to go off and research that now. I can fact check it if I want to, and I can do bits of work. But in terms of the heavy lifting of research and production, that's all being done by AI, which leaves us just to be able to have a really professional, intelligent, human conversation around those things without having to worry about who's going to go away and write all this up. The system is doing it for you. And I think the real strength for me is it's really highlighted everyone's voice within the organization. So it's not given, it would be very easy for me as the CEO to dominate that conversation, to put my views into the system. Whereas because everyone's going away and putting their own input in, and then it's coming back, it very much is allowing every stakeholder an equal voice within that system. And that I think is why we've ended up with such a powerful strategic plan at the end of it, because it really is co-constructed, and it really is hearing the input of all of the stakeholders, whether it's parents, community, head teachers, school leaders, executives, all of those people, students, all of their voice have something that represents them within our knowledge bases, and that's where the information is coming from. So it's been hugely powerful.
Yeah, that's so brilliant to hear, because that's been my vision and my mission with this. So I'm so pleased that you felt that, and then that it's worked. And I just think, just to finally wash up what just reminded me when you were talking then, was it's normal as well. I think you've got an amazing team, already pretty cohesive, even though there's flux and change in every organization these days. But I think what we've done with this as well is we've taken people on a journey, and every organization is going to have cynical people in the team, and it's actually a good sort of set of characters in any organization, any team, so that you've got diverse views. But I've seen how we've sort of evolved the team to move from some of the cynical views that are completely normal into actually we're all working together now, and we can see the value of this, and we're part of the team, if you like. I don't know if you felt that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of synergy of working together and that development of that relationship and that trust, I think it's really important that people trust the system that they're working with. And I think to watch that develop and mature, and like you say, it takes a certain amount of trust to begin to operate within a system like that. And I think, my staff have been great at embracing it. And I think it's allowed us to shape up, a document that potentially would have taken us, the best part of 6 months, I would imagine, to put together in a couple of afternoons, essentially.
Yeah, brilliant. And then the next step for us is how do we do the next step, which is evolving this methodology and getting buy-in from 21 schools as well as your organization.
Yeah, well, I think once you start to work with it, you begin to see the power of what it could do, and you think, wow, we could do this with this system, and we can do that, and it becomes never ending. You and I have these conversations all the time where we go, oh, this would be awesome if we did this. And so I think thinking of ways that we can, it's absolutely fundamental that we embrace the power of AI in education. And I think to lead from the front in the way that we have with our trust and say, well, actually at strategic board level, we're using AI to be able to do this for us. And that sets the tone, if you like, for the way our schools interact with AI. And that's been really important. So yeah, no, thank you. We love doing it, and I think I can see many more aspects in which we can develop this and move it even further forward.